If you don't know how to make your own DC and signal cables for your pedal board, you are leaving a lot of reliability on the table. If you can make your own cables, you will inherently have to understand the signal chain on your board, how the pedals work, and if there's ever a problem, you will be much quicker at being able to diagnose it just because of the fact that you understand what went into building the board. So making your own cables represents a lot more than just making your own cables. It is an understanding of your rig as a whole. So today I'm going to show you how to make your own Cioks RCA power cables for your pedal board. This is an RCA on one side and a 2.1 mil or 2.5 mil barrel on the other, which goes into your pedal. Firstly, you can see here that we're using a round DC cable. The main reason between round and the ones that come with Cioks are more of a zip cord, a flat zip cord. The round ones are easier to make nice cable channels. They come together really nicely, but really there's no huge benefit one way or another. These ones just look better. So we're going with that today. And as you can see here in the video, the first thing I do is test and confirm the polarity to make sure that the cable is as I assume. In this instance, that red goes to the center of the 2.1 mil plug and the black core goes to the sleeve. So I'm just checking that with a multimeter to make sure this is the case. No assumptions here, we're checking everything as we go. The main thing to know, this is the big point, when it comes to Cioks and RCA, it is inverted from what you would normally do if you're familiar with making your own 2.1 to 2.1 DC cables. What I mean by this is the sleeve on the RCA plug, the outside section of the plug, is ground. The center pin is going to be your positive voltage. This is coming from the Cioks power supply. Center is positive, sleeve is negative or ground. So we need to remember this when we're making our own cables. If we want to make a center negative, the standard DC cable, we need the center of the 2.1 to solder to the sleeve of the RCA. Keep it in mind, everything is inverted. The center of the RCA solders to the sleeve of the 2.1. So they kind of are inverted is kind of the language we're going to use for that today. When prepping these cables, you want the jacket of the DC cable, the round cable, to hit the strain relief of the RCA plug. You don't want the RCA plug strain relief to wrap around the exposed cores. So this is going to be a bit of a tight kind of connection, but we cut away just under a centimeter of the jacket to make sure that this happens. The next thing we do is trim away just the smallest amount of the red core, and then we are going to basically expose the copper on the red and the black cores so we can start soldering. Once we've done this, you tin both the red and the black core, and this is just going to make it a little bit easier later on when we're actually soldering to the plug itself. Once we've done that, then we can start prepping the plug. So the big tip here as well for RCA plugs, especially these Switchcraft ones, which are, I will admit, made for crimping, but we're actually going to use them as a soldered plug. The tip here is basically to fill that center pin with solder first, and then we've tinned the cable that will later connect here. But if you fill this first, later on soldering is going to be simple. We put a little bit of solder on the sleeve connection of the RCA plug, and then we can move into soldering the plug itself. To do this, this is where kind of the rubber hits the road. We add the tiniest bit of solder to our iron tip, reflow or reheat that center pin, and we can just run that cable, the black core, into the middle of that center pin. Now we don't have to overheat it for too long or try and fill it up with solder all in this short amount of time. We've already done a lot of the work ahead of time when we prepped the plug and the cable. When the center is done, now you move on to the sleeve, and I actually trim this away a little bit more than I initially planned. And the main reason for this is just to give myself a little bit of extra working room inside the plug there, so I'm not reheating the tip again while I'm trying to solder the sleeve. So trimmed it back a little bit, and now soldering and reflowing that solder that I put on the sleeve of the RCA makes this whole thing simple. Now that we have soldered, you can see that the jacket of the cable is in line with the strain relief on the RCA plug, and we can move on to the next step, which is inspecting our work, making sure there's no stray wires that might short out to something, or connections that look like they're cold. Basically, they could come undone easily if they were knocked or moved or just left for any period of time. Once we've inspected it, the joints are looking smooth. There's a little bit of a sheen to them. You can't get your fingernail under any connections. Everything is looking great. Now we can do our strain relief. And then with the shell on, always test your cables with the shells on. We can now test the cable. And the main thing when you're testing, especially on RCA plugs where everything's inverted, is predict your test ahead of time. So in this instance, I know the sleeve or the outside section of the RCA plug should connect to the center of the 2.1 mil barrel. The center pin of the RCA should connect to the sleeve of the 2.1 mil barrel. That's the prediction. Then we take the multimeter, or in this case, we're just using a cable tester, and we just make sure that the continuity is showing that those indeed are the connections. They are. We are good to go. You have now made your own RCA Cioks power cable. Congratulations. That is it. Put your comments below. I'll see you there. And any other cables you guys want to see in future, also put them in the comments, and I'll make sure to keep these videos coming. See you guys later.